We don't have to all be suffering in silence. That's like the biggest epidemic of men right now.
Which is like just as deadly as some of the leading diseases or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that suffering in silence is like the male version of how we navigate through loneliness. I was actually kind of in a state of feeling a bit of self-doubt, self-criticism, feeling that sensation of unworthiness, of lost.
Which is a very normal state for most people.
But yet, when you're going through it, you're like, this is the worst, and I feel like everyone else has their lives figured out, but except for me, right? And part of the healing process is when we connect with God and He helps us identify the lie and replace it with truth.
Mike Allen, you're many things. I know you do a lot of stuff, and I'm fairly new to you. I met you through John, who was on the podcast, John Moore. Yep. He is one of the co-founders of the Heare Brotherhood. I'm repping the hat today because I believe in it. You're repping the shirt. And first off, I want to say you guys have created something awesome, something really like needed for guys, even guys that are doing well. Like I would consider myself doing well. Let me tell you what it's done for me. It's given me an opportunity to go into the app, and I can see where people are checking in mentally. And some say they're doing great. Some say they're doing 50-50 okay, low or really low. And it's given me the chance to go into the low guys and just, I don't even know them, just type encouraging thoughts like from my heart. Just like it. Short, sweet, like you got this, praying, rooting for you.
Yeah. And
dude, nowhere else can I think that I have access to that where I can see how someone's doing and then reach out to them.
Yeah.
And I've had days where I'm low, but it's such a cool opportunity for me to just reach out. And I've had some good conversations, and it's been really special for me. And you guys created that platform. It's amazing. Tell me, like, we talked to John. He told us like the reason for it, but I want to know why you felt so called to help with that.
Yeah, no, it's first of all, thank you for that. And that's awesome. And that's exactly one of the main purposes, is just to connect with our fellow brothers. And it's global. We've got people all over the world that are on this platform. And one of the most incredible things is just to get on there and realize like we're all having the same male human experience.
Yeah.
And there's such strength and comfort in knowing that, that we are not alone in our struggle. And that we can reach out. We can not just hypothetically or theoretically know that that's the case, but you can actually reach out and talk to somebody or see someone's post and be like, I get that. Like I've been there, or I'm in that right now. And then you can connect and talk about it, either in the main feed or in the private messages and go deeper and create a connection. So it's been really cool. And that's just one facet of the whole movement.
Yeah.
So I'll get to your question though, which was what got me into it. Well, I had been doing men's retreats for about the last 2 years, and I think
were you putting those on? Like you were organizing them? And okay.
So my wife, and she's like a yoga instructor, and she does mindfulness and all kinds of cool stuff. And she had been doing things along those lines for women or for couples or whatever for quite some time. And I had always just kind of wondered, like, what would like a men's thing look like,
Yeah.
Because she would come home from these experiences and just be like, oh, it was so amazing. And I was just thinking, like, what would like a guy's version of this look like? And of course, my first thought was like, well, we'd have to like go, throw axes and like, like do a bunch of manly stuff, And I was like, but then I'll come in with a little like mindfulness or a little, moment where we can get a little more like genuine and authentic. So I had all these ideas of what I thought it would be. What it turned out being was much more the latter. There's some adventure and fun stuff that we do, but it is really about doing the inner work and the work as a brotherhood, right? As a community, because there's power in that, in seeing people open up, be vulnerable, connect with them, and then you're on this journey together, which is really, there's something to that, this idea of community and communion. I think there's no coincidence that those words are so interrelated.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had been doing some men's retreats. There's a whole story of how I got into kind of structuring that and starting the first few. But I had done a few of those, and then somebody that attended my retreat was aware of the work that John and Justin had just been getting off the ground. So they had already kind of met and talked about it, and the Heare name was already created. John had already made the branding for it, which looks dope.
Yeah.
I'm a designer and a branding guy, and it was awesome to just be like, it's done.
Yeah.
And they nailed it. It's awesome. So I was connected to John and Justin through a guy who came to one of my retreats. So
Cool.
he knew them through LinkedIn. LinkedIn was kind of the birthplace of the movement. It's where all of our organic growth happened through LinkedIn, and largely due to Justin and John just opening up in that forum about men's mental wellness, about their personal struggles and history, and really like debunking a lot of the stigmas around that just through their examples and their courage of any place to open up about like
LinkedIn. Wow.
Yeah.
Like everyone's being professional and showing their best foot, like hire me, I'm doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
That was totally my view. Like my persona on LinkedIn was just like highlight reel only, like I'm just all the good, right? That mask of like, I got it together. Yeah. And when I saw what they were sharing, and then almost even more importantly, well, equally importantly, the responses that were coming through, the comments that were coming through, and they were telling me about the DMs they were getting from people who were just like, thank you so much for showing like or for being raw and real and open and honest, because it gave them permission to like,
acknowledge that they feel those things too.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, we don't have to all be suffering in silence. That's like the biggest epidemic of men right now. I mean, there was literally a declaration of an epidemic of loneliness from the Surgeon General like a few months ago.
Which is like just as deadly as some of the leading diseases or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's that suffering in silence is like the male version of how we navigate through loneliness. It's like we just suffer in silence. And as soon as somebody opens up and shows that they can be real, they can be open, they can be vulnerable, they can admit that it's not all perfect, they don't have it all together, it's so healing and so connecting. That connection that happens through vulnerability and authenticity it's healing. It's powerful. It's the antidote to shame too. when we can open up and share what's really going on and realize that we're not going to be rejected, that we're still worthy of love and belonging. I mean, that is healing and powerful.
I mean, those two are those two things. The opposite of that is why you would want to stay in shame and be silent.
Exactly.
One of the coolest things that your app has, and I think I just take the Heare Brotherhood for granted now, the app, because it's so open, and I go in there and it's just vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so I think that I do now take it for granted, but like men culturally have never been like that. I've never seen that like that before. But you guys have something called the anonymous question.
Yeah.
Where it is. I was talking to John. It's like truly anonymous.
Yes.
I mean, you guys, the founders, you don't know. It's coded where they can write. A guy can write in any question.
Yeah.
And then you guys post it, and then people just go through and give responses.
Yes.
And I can't even believe
the kinds of questions.
Some of them are so crazy.
Yeah.
Like I can't relate to some of them, and some of them I'm like, oh yeah, this could have been my question.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that right there, that forum is priceless. I don't know how how it could be in a better way, because the guys who are answering are truly like brothers. They're like, I've been through this. This is what I did. Some people are like, I haven't been through this, but I love you.
Yes.
And that's what I'm saying is like the vulnerability and the openness of men on your platform is incredible and notable and remarkable. And I'm so happy to be a part of it and rep
awesome.
it.
Thank you.
What's your vision for it? Are you already there?
Well, I mean, for sure, a lot of what we imagined and dreamed has happened. Like a lot of those things have happened. Even it just becoming a global brotherhood. Like we set that as part of our mission statement, and I think within a week we had a member on every continent except for Antarctica. We're still holding out for that that one researcher.
I'll go down.
Sweet, join from there. Yeah. But I mean, it's literally the kind of manifesting of these things has been remarkable to witness. And we actually had the problem, maybe not unexpectedly, but we almost grew too fast. And that's something that we're course correcting now, because we had just people joining by the hundreds by the day.
Hundreds by the day?
Hundreds by the day, because we tested some ads. We were like, let's see what happens if we, put this out there. And it was just like, we opened the floodgates and people were joining by the droves. But it started to change the feeling of the space, right? So some people were coming on there, maybe not fully understanding the intention of the space, or fully reading the oath and aligning with it, and reading the community guidelines. And so it started to change shape a little bit and feel more like what you'd see on a regular social media feed. And so we had to be like, whoa, like that's not what this is. And so we've been kind of enforcing, the guidelines and encouraging people to be there for the right reasons. And so that's been a little bit of a recent challenge or struggle, but also so many good people have come in and from around the world. And that's been one of the coolest things.
South Africa, England,
Australia.
I know, John, you guys have said there's been some problems with things, but I haven't noticed that much.
Good.
Aside from the fact that there's just way more people.
Yeah.
Like there's just way more responses to everything.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
that's good.
So maybe it's not, maybe it's not as bad as, I mean, I get it, because you're always really critical of your own thing.
Well, and any problem comes right to us.
Yeah.
Right. So we're seeing an outsized volume. It's a minority of people that are maybe, abusing the space or there for the wrong reasons. But when every one of those that comes to us, we're like, it's a false perception or a biased perception, I think, of the reality. And so it actually, it's very reassuring to me to hear that, like, you're not feeling that.
I didn't resonate. When John told me what was going on, I'm like, I don't feel that.
Good.
I'm like, all right, well.
That's awesome.
So what makes you care so much about your fellow man, your fellow brothers?
Oh, so
like, why is this a special thing to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to that. I can honestly trace part of the answer. I can trace back to just the fact that I grew up with a house full of women,
like sisters,
4 older sisters, and my mom. My parents divorced when I was, 1 or 2, and so it was literally me and the 5 women at home from my whole childhood. And my mom met my stepdad, who I just call my dad, because they got married when I was 7 years old, and I was pumped to like have a guy in the house, right? But I had also been spared a lot of the trauma that my siblings had gone through from the previous relationships that didn't go well. And so my sisters were like, oh no, like some new guy, they were just, there was a lot of trauma and like baggage around that. And so it was really difficult initially for him to come in. By the way, like, let me just shout out to my dad, who was 46 years old, had never been married, just bachelor all the way up until that time, met my mom. Well, they knew each other in college or whatever. Anyway, they started dating and they got married, and suddenly he goes from bachelor life for 46 years to 4 daughters and a son, and most of those daughters are teenagers in the peak of like challenging life, right? And he just stepped into that and was incredible in the way that he handled it.
How did he do that?
So I don't have a ton of memories from when I was like 7 years old, right? But I remember he had a little family meeting with all of us, either right before or after the wedding. And I remember him just saying, I'm not going to be here and try to be your dad. Like, I love your mom, and I'm here to be, I want to be here for you. I want to be your friend. I want to have a relationship, but I'm not going to impose myself. I'm not going to like try to be something I'm not, but I'm here. And that he just like said that, and he stuck with it. And one of my sisters didn't talk to him for months and months, maybe a year. I think that's the story. I don't remember that part vividly, but as we talk about these things, I think she didn't talk to him for like a full year of living under the same roof, because she was just so, jaded and hurt from past things. And
oh my gosh.
So he built trust by just being steady, by being consistent, by proving to everyone that he was like committed. And was awesome. But for me, on the other hand, I was like spared a lot of that because I was just too young, and so I just embraced him right away. I was like, we were buds right away, and he was just an amazing, father and influence in my life. And
oh my gosh.
So I think like this was some of the backstory of maybe why seeking those brotherly kinds of connections and relationships, I'm sure that's a factor, if I get into the deep psychology of it, there's probably something there. I think the other factor of this is I think I've always just had a tendency towards really empathizing with people and caring about people. And sometimes that's a strength and sometimes that's a weakness, right? But I love being able to make just deeper and genuine connections with people. And it's something that I wasn't very good at a lot of my life. I was really good at the superficial kind of connection of trying to make someone laugh, trying to be the funny guy. I was class clown in high school because I was very like attention seeking. And I loved all of that. But it was quite superficial a lot of the time. And then when you experience then like, what does a deeper, more meaningful connection feel like, and what does that look like? I mean, it was just something that I realized like, man, I've kind of missed this for many phases of my life. And it's when you can go heart to heart with somebody and like really deeply connect, it's like, I just want that all the time. Like I don't care much for the superficial anymore.
I get that. Yeah.
It's hard for me to have a conversation where we're just talking about the weather or sports or what's happening in the news. And I'm just like, cool. We can talk about those things, but like what I'd really like to know is like, how's your heart? What do you believe? What do you care about? What's your passion? What's your purpose? Like that kind of connection to me is just so enriching and fulfilling. And I love getting to know people at that level. It's a beautiful thing.
You do a good job at that.
Thank you.
I think that because you are spiritually mature and want to know and like want the deep connections, that's why people respond well. I mean, you guys set the tone for it, and then you invite it because you're leading. So I went to one of your breathwork sessions.
Yeah,
and it's called holotropic breathing.
Yep.
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
And it's if you're to explain to someone outside of them knowing anything, it sounds so weird.
It does.
I mean, it's like absurd.
Yep.
And so I laid out, there was 20 people there, 30 people there. We go to, you have this really cool studio, and the holotropic breathing, you lay on your back, and then I start breathing in, it's open mouth. And, so you're breathing in kind of a full breath, and then you breathe in a second one to go really full, and then you go out, and it goes, we did it for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
The music you chose was amazing. It's like, it was trance-like. You go into this like narrative, almost like this arc. It's soft, and then it gets big and emotional, and comes back down. But the breathing is so crazy because I think you're offsetting like carbon dioxide and oxygen in your body. Like my hands felt like balloons, like the Pink Floyd song. I even said that in the thing. But I had such an incredible spiritual experience. I want to know why I had that experience. Teach me about this, because I've been to breathing sessions, but what is happening where I can have a life-changing experience? And then is it real? Yeah. I know these are hard questions. I believe it's real, but I want to know, is it real?
I love the question.
Yeah.
And this is where we get into, there's the physiological explanations for things, and then there's the spiritual explanation for things. And one can't really very well describe the other, or they complement each other, but it's not empirical evidence, right? Because when you get into the spiritual realm, we just don't have the means to measure that or quantify it. Sure. Exactly. And I honestly, like I've read a lot about what happens physiologically, and I've researched that, and I've read different articles and studies and research, and there's not a ton around this specific modality, but there's stuff out there, and I've looked into that, and everything that I've read or examined about that, to me, it's not very satisfying information.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, here's what's happening with the carbon dioxide, and here's what's happening in your brain, and you're, bypassing the lizard brain or the fight or flight response, the sympathetic and the sympathetic state, and you're transitioning.
It's not very sexy talk.
I mean, it's like some people are really fascinated by that. And I do think it's interesting, but it just doesn't do justice to the experiences that I've had with it or that other people have with it. And to me, the way to explain that, like to explain what happened, and I don't know that I can explain what happened for you. I think only you'd be able to do that.
Yeah.
But I can tell you what my experience was with, and I'll tell you my first breathwork session happened at a men's retreat, which was, honestly, it kind of set me into the trajectory that I'm on now. And it was around the time I mentioned earlier where I was kind of thinking of like, what would a men's retreat look like? And my wife had a friend who did retreats, and he invited me to go to one. And it was funny because I was like, well, I don't know if I want to go to some men's retreat.
Dude, men just being, not vulnerable. That's just what we do. That's what we do.
I resisted it big time.
Of course we do.
And I was thinking of like hosting them, and yet I don't want to go to one,
Come to mine, but I'm not coming to yours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I was just like, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen. So I resisted it. I finally, went through the process of like, no, I'm just going to do this. And, shout out to Brian Hurd. He ran the retreat. His thing is called the Evolution Project. And I loved how open he was he knew my intent and my interest in doing these as well. And he did not see that as like a threat or a competition or anything. He was like, I'm so glad that you feel called to this work.
Dude, don't you love people like that?
It was so cool. Just this abundance mentality,
It's not a pie. We're not slicing up a pie. It's I love that. I respect it so much when I see that in others. I try to be that too.
Same. Yeah. And he modeled that for me. And now I've had similar experiences where then I get to do unto others as he did unto me. It's cool. So he invited me. He knew I was kind of thinking about doing this thing. And a part of that retreat experience was the breathwork practice. And so that was my first introduction to it. And I've done some meditation, I've done some, breathing exercises, so it wasn't totally foreign to me, but this specific modality, and as he explained it, the facilitator, his name
holotropic breathing, right?
This is Louis Hamner, who was my facilitator. As he was explaining it and saying, you might have a tetany response where your hands cramp up or whatever, I was sort of like, whoa, like what are we about to do? Like, what is this? This is some next level stuff, right? And so I was sort of like, you get a little anxious about it, right? With that kind of explanation up front. But he also spoke about just some beautiful spiritual concepts around breath. And I've since researched that even more, right? Like he shared some really cool stuff around the meaning of breath and spirit and how those are very interconnected and intertwined. And in many different languages and cultures, it's the same word, including in the Greek and the Hebrew, which then you think of you think of scripture, you think of the Old and the New Testament, and how wherever the words breath and spirit show up, that's coming from the same root words, which is just fascinating. And
then based on context, later translate. They put it what they think would have been the more proper word.
Right,
but exactly. It's the same word.
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Pretty fascinating, because then you think about in the creation, God breathes into Adam's nostrils the breath of life, and he receives his spirit. It's like kind of redundant, actually, when you read it that way. But even thinking of the Holy Spirit, could that be interpreted as the holy breath? In the Hebrew, it's ruach. I don't know if I pronounced that exactly right, but
I would know.
It's but it's connected though to creation. So when Elohim, Yahweh, through their ruach, they create. Like that's how you speak, and right through your breath you speak, and through the spoken word, things are created. And it's just really fascinating stuff to ponder upon and to dig into. And so he shared a little bit about that around the Greek specifically. I think he speaks or knows Greek or something. Anyway, so he talked about that, and I was like, whoa, this is cool. And he shared that, a beautiful quote by that woman. Her name's Sandra Thurman Caporal, from, I can't remember which church, but Christian woman. And she has this beautiful passage about the name Yahweh, and how many scholars and rabbis have noted that Yahweh, in the original Hebrew, it's just YHWH. And the YH is like an inhale, like and the WH is the exhale. And so every breath speaks the name of God. Every breath of our life, from a newborn to our last breath. Our last breath is the last time we speak the name of God, and then we enter into his presence, right? I mean, It's just this beautiful concept. Yeah. And so he shared that, and I was just so moved by that, and then went into a breathing practice. And so that tone that was set was so powerful to me. But admittedly, when I got into the actual practice of pulling breath, I was like, this is super weird and uncomfortable, and my mouth's getting dry, and the music was just blaring, and I was like, it was almost like just a distraction. I was like, I'm so distracted by what I'm sensing in my body, what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling in my mouth. I had an eye mask on, so there was, some visual sensory deprivation there, which actually was a really cool part of it. But in the beginning, you're just kind of trying to figure out what you're doing. Why am I doing this? What is happening? And I remember the words just kept coming to my mind. I just kept thinking, God is above all of this. God is above all of this. Because that's what I was there for. I was there to reconnect with God, because I was feeling distant from him. And therefore I was feeling distant from myself. I was actually kind of in a state of feeling a bit of self-doubt, self-criticism, kind of shameful things were coming to my memory. And I just felt like, man, like feeling that sensation of unworthiness, of lost. I was just in a funky state as I was going into that retreat.
Which is a very normal state for most people.
Very common, right? Yeah. But yet when you're going through it, you're like, this is the worst. And I feel like everyone else has their lives figured out, but except for me, right? So I was in that kind of state going into this retreat experience and going into that practice. And as I was just doing the rhythmic breathing, and thinking, God is above all of this, something just, a switch flipped. And suddenly I just felt like he picked me up out of that physical, temporal space. And I was suddenly in this spiritual space. And the words that came to me were, be free. Just be free of all of that stuff I was holding on to, carrying, burdening myself with, all of the mental stuff that we do, like that just kind of brings us anguish, like the cycles of negative self-talk that we get stuck in. I just felt like he gave me permission to let it all go. Just be free of it. And as soon as I felt that message come to me, I just started sobbing. I mean, it was just like I was being wrung out from the inside, just like, we're just going to rinse all of this out of you. Like all of this stuff that's been burdening you. You can just be free of all of it. And I just like cried it out through this mask, just like soaking this mask up with my tears. And I mean, just ugly face cry, like kind of release. And it was so powerful. It was so beautiful. And when I was free of all of the crap that I was carrying around, I suddenly had so much space for all the good, for the love, for the acceptance, for the compassion towards self, inclusive, right? I felt like it came from God, and then I could feel it for myself, and then I could feel it for everyone in my life. I literally like focused on each of my family members after I kind of felt it initially for myself. Then I focused on my wife, and I focused on one by one, I focused on each of my kids. There was even one relationship with one of my kids that was feeling like a little tense at the time. And it was just like swallowed up in this overwhelming feeling of love. I mean, it was such a powerful spiritual experience. And at that moment I was like, I'm for sure doing this. as part of my retreats, like 100%. So what's the explanation of that? For me, it was a powerful tool for me to connect with God. That's the spiritual explanation.
Like, amen.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I know the words don't express how amazing that experience was.
Yeah.
Likewise, I can't give words to what I experienced during that session at your studio that you walked me through. After I have powerful spiritual experiences, I can almost plan on
the opposition,
like the next day,
the adversary,
yep. Satan,
yep.
the snake, whatever you want to,
yep.
like the next day resistance is like, boom. Has this happened to you too?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like
before and after. I'll
before,
say that.
Before and after. Yeah, you're right. But it's like, it's almost like the next day it's like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
That wasn't as, because now the Spirit, it's almost unfortunate. You go to the bed, you have a spiritual experience, you go to bed and you never wake up like, at least I don't. I don't wake up like, I'm just like so
still
full.
right there.
Yeah. I'm never there. So it's almost like you have to start the day again.
Yeah.
You have to breathe and make the daily choice. Am I going to be courageous? Am I going to be with God today?
Yeah.
But that resistance is real. Like it's
100%.
It's so annoying.
100%.
I hate it.
I've come to recognize it as, so when it comes before a significant moment or event, I've almost like a Pavlovian response kind of thing, right? It's like, wow, I'm feeling pretty crappy. I'm feeling bombarded. I'm feeling attacked mentally, spiritually, whatever. It's almost this indicator of like, something cool is going to happen soon. you know, like if I can just get through, like, and keep pushing through and keep my intention and keep the plan of whatever the thing is. I mean, I felt it so many times leading up to retreats, and it's made me kind of question, like, why am I even doing this? Who am I to do this? Like, I'm not some qualified, professionally trained, traveled around the world and became a guru, or like, I don't have any of those qualifications, right? But yet I've had these incredible experiences in holding space with people to really like reconnect with themselves and with God and with each other. And I'm like,
thank you for saying all that, because I fully resonate whenever I do at my events, or like, who am I to start a podcast? Like, I'm just a music producer, and I feel that. And so you saying that just strengthens me. So thank you.
Yeah. It's literally like, oh, okay, something cool's around the corner. And if I can just be mindful and aware and recognize what this is, I think that's the hardest thing, is when you kind of, can you get to a point where you can step outside of what you're experiencing and observe it and be like, I can discern what this is. And it doesn't mean it just magically goes away, but at least you have some perspective on it and you understand why. And that is motivating.
I want your advice on something. Because there's a difference between resistance and then a dead path, I think.
Yeah. Well, say more about that.
So for example, let's say, I'm trying to think of like a personal experience. It's like, like a past business I've started. Okay. It's like, it's just not working. It's like, it doesn't feel good. It's not working. How do you decipher resistance, like the enemy bombarding you with just like a dead end of something? I think this is a very important question. Yeah,
no, that is a good question. And I'm just off the cuff going to explore this with you a little bit.
Okay.
I think when there is, for me, if there's pure intent in the thing that I'm doing, and if I can honestly say that the intent is aligned with God's will, bring on the resistance. It's going to be there, right? I don't think there's any good thing that's going to bless people's lives that we attempt to do that's not going to be met with some resistance. At least that's been the pattern for me. If I can discern and be really self-aware of like, what actually is my motive? What is my intention? What is my objective? And if it comes down to something that is maybe self-serving or a selfish desire, or if it's for the wrong reasons, if it's not pure intent. And then I'm hitting walls. I'm like, maybe that's coming from a higher source that's saying this isn't the right path. Like your heart's not in the right place. And so I'm not going to allow you to continue down this path.
For your own good.
For your own good.
Even though you want it.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like that's 90% of my life. 95.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just riffing on this idea with you, but I think there's something there.
Yeah.
I think that the other times when I feel like I'm maybe pushing or trying for something, and I'm like, this just feels like it's not working out. Even if maybe I am like, no, I think my intent is pure, and I think I am doing this for the right reasons. It might just be the wrong timing or the wrong circumstances. And so there have been times where, particularly with my wife, we try to, do a lot of things together and make decisions together. And there are times when we've intended to do what we felt was a good thing, and we just kind of kept feeling like it's not like flowing, it's not happening, it's not working out. And in some of those cases, we've just gotten prayerful about it and been like, prayer, for me, what has been most effective and most helpful in me figuring out answers is not kind of going to God with open-ended questions and just saying like, why isn't this working? And then waiting for something, or like, what am I supposed to do? And waiting for something. Like those, I typically don't get much clarity or good direction from those kinds of questions. But if I go to God in prayer and I say, I keep feeling like there's a lot of resistance here. And my hunch, or in my heart, I kind of feel like we need to change direction. So I try to listen to that, right? Like, what am I feeling internally? Like, is this something to power through, or is this something to let go? And if I'm like, deep down, I think it's probably not right, or I think we need to let go of this, the argument might be, oh, that's the adversary fooling you, or it's coming from God. Well, let's go and ask God then. Mm-hmm. And so I will go in prayer and say, I'm feeling like we need to go a different direction, or I feel like this isn't right. Can you confirm that for me? Just a feeling in my heart. Like, can you just help me feel if this is right or not? Mm-hmm. And even to discern what that feeling is kind of an interesting thing, right? Some call it like a burning in the bosom, and there's different ways that we kind of feel that. And for me, the burning sensation has been hard to be like, yes, that's it. But a good friend of mine who's become who was a bit of like a spiritual mentor to me, she explained it this way. She was like, does it feel expansive, like it expands in your heart and in your mind, or does it feel like it constricts or contracts in your heart and your mind? And to me, that was just such a simple, what is the sensation around this answer that I'm bringing to God? And when I'm asking for a confirmation, does it open and expand, or does it close and constrict? And that's what I go off of now. I'm like, yes, because I feel that pretty much every time I bring a solution that I've come up with to God, and I'm asking for a confirmation or the impression of like, I don't have it right. Like, try something else, keep going.
Dude, that's beautiful. I've definitely had those expansive versus constrictive responses. But to even get to the point where you feel those, you have to have space in your life.
That's true.
I'm assuming you're not praying and then turning on Netflix immediately.
Oh,
like what,
absolutely.
So how are you living your daily life where you have space to hear from God?
Oh, it's a great question, because, I know a lot of people are all about the routine that they never break from. It's like, I get up and I do these things, or I get up early and I go to the gym and then I meditate and all of that. I don't have that kind of consistent, regular practice, honestly. Whenever I've tried to, and I think it's just my mentality around this, and maybe this is a place for me to grow and to learn, but I have felt like, when, in the past, when I have tried to like be really disciplined and goal oriented and do these things, it's often come from this place of like, I should do this stuff. And when I'm telling myself I should do something, what's at the core of that? What's at the root of that, right?
Is there lack? What is it? Do there ends lack?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's this idea of lack. It's this idea of not good enough. It's this
You're
idea
not in the
of,
right place right now. You should, yeah. Okay.
it comes like at its core, it's like, it's kind of shame based. And this, by the way, this isn't saying that like doing those things is based on shame. It was just my perception of it, my experience with it. Those things felt like they were coming from shame. And then what happens when you don't fulfill or follow through or, check the boxes? Shame's right there ready for you to be like, see, yeah, like you should just not even do this. So I guess what I'm getting at is my approach has been much more around, instead of having like a checklist or goals that I'm trying to check off consistently, it's more about intention and purpose on a daily basis. So my background's branding. It's all about helping organizations figure out their values, their principles, their purpose, their mission, and then how do you express those things, right? How does that manifest in the world, visually and tone of voice and otherwise? And there was a time many years ago when I sort of had this epiphany that those principles could be applied to me personally and to my family. And it kind of was a Beauty for Ashes story. I was I was having a hard time at work at the time. We were living in the Bay Area, and I was at this exciting job, but things were just not going well. Relationship with boss and with some other people, it was getting pretty toxic, and lots of misunderstandings, lots of miscommunications, and very stressful. And my wife could just see it like day in, day out. I would just come home sort of like bogged down by how things were going, right? And stressed out. I mean, we were in the Bay Area and we had 4 kids at the time.
Gosh, wow.
It's an expensive place to live. And if your job feels like it's on thin ice, like it was pretty stressful. And I had this one like meeting, kind of like a performance review type meeting. And it just was like the worst meeting of my career. Like it just totally sucked, which by the way, I'm like, I thought I was pretty good at what I do. And now I'm second guessing everything, and I'm like doubting myself. And
it's crazy how one thing can totally undercut years of confidence.
Yeah, it totally was that. It kind of shook me, and I'm going like, do I need to change careers? It was just, it was a lot to be working through mentally. So I got home from that terrible review, and my wife can see that I'm just like, got this storm cloud over my head, and we get the kids to bed, and we go in the bedroom, and I'm just like, can I just tell you what's going on? And I just like dumped everything. I was like, here's what happened. Here's what I'm worried about. I'm afraid of this. I'm like, maybe we need to move. Maybe we need to like uproot our family, just all the things that came with that. And she just like a champ, just like listened and it wasn't getting caught up in it with me emotionally. She just like held space for me, like a pro, and just listened. And after I like got it all out, she was like, can I say something now? And I was like, please, yes, of course. And she got this big smile on her face, just really genuine, like really authentic. And she was like, Mike, I think this is great. Like, this is a good thing because it's going to push you to figure out what you actually want to do. Like let this be the impetus to do some real work on figuring stuff out. Like, let's figure it out together. And we started writing like that night. She was like, let's just write. What are the most important things to us in our life? Just write the list. And so we started writing the list, and it's like family, quality time together, getting outside more, like more nature, and like, don't worry about the constraints right now of like the logistics and the cost and, all of that. Just like let all that go for a minute and just write like, what are the most important things? And so we did that individually, and then we compared, and we were like, oh, these are the same. These are different, but like I can support you and you can support me in these things, right? And we just kept going down this path of exploration, of discovery, of creation. And it was this incredible weekend because it was so liberating and freeing and exciting to like spiritually create our lives and our future together, right?
It's never too late to do that. You had 4 kids when you did that.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, like, I feel like I do this every 5 years or something. You
Nice.
recreate.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
That's awesome.
Doesn't matter where we're at. We can start that
Yeah.
new creation and new vision of what we want to do. Anyway, keep going.
Oh, absolutely. And what was so funny is after working on this for like the weekend, I remember having this moment where I was like in the bathroom getting ready for the day, and it dawned on me. I was like, we just did a branding session for ourselves, and I didn't even like totally realize it in the middle of it. I was like, this is the kind of stuff we do to help organizations like figure out their mission and their purpose. And I was like, we just did that. And it was so powerful and invigorating and exciting and beautiful. And then I was talking to my wife about it, and we were like, we need to make this like a more, like, I'm going to like design a family crest, and we're going to type all this stuff up. I'm going to typeset it all out, and have like our values and our guiding principles and our purpose statement. And so we created that. I designed it. We have it up on our wall at our home. It's like our family mission and purpose, right?
Cool.
And so our kids can just see it all the time, and we read it together as a family once a week. We just have that as a part of our regular thing.
It's
and
really special.
It's awesome. And then we did it individually, and that was really powerful. So circling all the way back to the original question, which was around routine,
Making space for God to talk to you.
making space for that. For me, it's like, am I in line with my purpose in the things that I'm choosing today? Whether that looks like I'm going to get up and go exercise, or I'm going to get up and go do a meditation or whatever. And my approach, for better or worse, has been mostly kind of an intuition-led approach to those practices. And I actually love living that way, because it comes from a place of, I want to do this right now, not I have to do this right now, or I should do this right now, which again can be attached to those meanings of like shame or whatever. I think that our bodies often are telling us exactly what we need a lot of the time. And there is strength in saying, maybe I don't feel like working out, but I'm going to work out anyway. And so I totally acknowledge and respect that. And I do that myself as well. But there's also something really powerful about listening to your body that's saying, you actually need to rest right now. And, okay, maybe I will rest right now. And then after resting, then it's like, now you're ready to go and push it, right?
Yeah.
And to go like work hard or whatever. And so I'm kind of on this journey of figuring that out right now, of like, how can I do good and listen to my intuition and what my body and my spirit are telling me. And part of what makes this work is removing a lot of the distraction. Netflix, news. I used to look at the news feed all the time. I don't anymore, because it just didn't bring me any joy or light or goodness. I will occasionally look at some headlines just to be informed on like what's happening in the world, but that was a significant change for me for the better. I don't really watch TV. I don't really have, I mean, if I'm playing music, it's usually pretty uplifting stuff, it's, sometimes I'll play fun stuff, whatever, just depending on what it is. But, so removing some of those influences, allowing space for, being able to like, right now it feels like I need to go and just have a meditation session. Right now, I feel like I need to reach out to this person I've been thinking about. Right now, I'm going to go out into the detached garage and do some kickboxing and some yoga and like crank the music for kickboxing and just like, poof, that's such a fun workout combination, by the way.
That sounds awesome.
You go hit the bags and then you do some yoga. It's like this yin yang experience.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really fun.
Very cool.
Or I'll go to the gym or, and do some weights or whatever. And so I think it's so many factors, but what feels to me so good about that is I feel like I'm really trying to listen to and honor myself for wherever I'm at any given day.
Yeah. I think I love that. I think where you're at is like a next level of trust in yourself, and you already have good habits. Some people, when they're a complete mess, need structure.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I'm not going to prescribe that to anyone, but I mean, like different times in my life, a structure has been very good.
Yes.
But also once I get into the structure and start listening to myself and listening to God and the Spirit, the intuition does when you want it. Especially, that's the whole thing too, is like we see what we want to see. Do you want to see the intuition? Do you want to see God talking to you? And so I want to see that. And I want to have like an empty mind so I can feel like who I should text or call. And I do get those promptings, which are so cool. And I'm so grateful for. But, so I think you're absolutely right. Like that is like the pinnacle of way to live, of just like flowing, right? Flowing, like this is what I need. But it's hard to get from very bottom to that immediately.
Well, and there are the weaknesses of it as well.
For sure.
Where I sometimes am like, I haven't worked out for a while because I haven't felt, called to it. And then I'm like, then I get into the, I should. And then I'm like, whatever. Like, let's just do it. So yes, but I mean, I'm figuring it out. I don't feel like
I respect it. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, like just across the board. I mean, it's like where you're at, what's going to work for you. I think like the core of it, the very base is honesty. Yeah. Right. Like if you can see yourself as clearly as you can, I don't think anyone can see themselves completely clearly, but as clear as you can to know that if I don't set an alarm, I'm not going to get up and do that. You know what I'm saying? Be honest about that. If I don't have a schedule, am I going to do it? Or am I going to be healthier if I listen to my body? It's kind of like, it goes down to the honesty thing. Yeah. For me, at least, I could be talking total nonsense, but that's how I feel on that.
I would only add to that. I think it's honesty and also an understanding of true principles. Yeah. Right. Like, cause I might feel like, my body wants all this sugar and candy that's around from my kids from their Halloween and that's where I go, well, in excess, yes, that's going to be a problem. Can I have a sample? Sure. But like, am I in control? Am I using that as a way to escape or run away from something that I'm trying to not feel right now? And that's a silly example, but there's all kinds of behaviors like that.
No, it's not silly, actually. That's kind of like the whole point of everything. Let's end on that, okay? Let's talk about that. Okay. I was telling you last week, Thomas McConkie, who was on the podcast, his definition of sin was going around pain and not going in it with Christ. Yeah. Like going down, like Christ never stepped to the side. He always went down into it and then became free of it and moved on. When we feel pain or uncomfortable feelings, the natural man wants to sidestep, escape through all types of vices. Yeah. We don't need to name all of them, but we know what those are. And so you had a cool take on this, and let's I'm going to give you the final word. Why don't you talk on this and then we'll wrap.
Cool. I mean, I think Thomas is really onto something there. And I the way that I've framed this or thought about it is usually our sinful choices are a misguided attempt to fulfill a valid need that we have. That need might be for feeling loved, for connection, for maybe relief from discomfort or pain. Like that is, I think, a valid need. Like we don't want to keep feeling this. But that's where we can fall into, I'm just going to numb out or distract myself with something that is maybe a temporary solution, but ultimately is harmful to us in the long run, or becomes a vice, or has the potential to become a vice. And so there's these counterfeit means that we try to fulfill our needs, and that's where, and it comes from our own woundedness, it comes from being broken and hurting and just being misguided in how to move forward in that very uncomfortable space. So I agree with what Thomas shared, which is we are doing ourselves a service to acknowledge our pain, our brokenness, our hurt, to not try to run from that, but to just move through it. And sometimes that is the hardest work, right? Is to be like, I'm feeling all of this. I don't want to, but can I just face it and sit with it, identify it? Maybe I need to journal about it. Maybe I need to go for a walk and just reflect on it. Maybe I need to talk to a trusted friend or person about this thing. There's a lot of healthy ways to move through it, to process it. And then we get to invite Christ into it and experience healing from that, and then let it go. And the longer we resist doing that, it's just this persistent thorn in our side, right? But if we're willing to become self-aware enough to recognize what the pain is, maybe where it came from, and to seek healing in that, when we have these traumatic experiences that cause us pain, we often create belief systems around that. Let's just come up with an example. If I felt ashamed or embarrassed from something that happened in my childhood, somebody rejected me, and I had this experience, I one time just felt so weak because a stronger kid pushed me around and I felt totally powerless and I felt just so weak and it hurt. Mentally, physically, he didn't really like beat me up or anything, but I just felt like totally weak. And then there's this belief that's planted and imprinted in our programming of our minds, which is, I am weak and I'm rejected because of being weak. I'm not respected. And then if we don't do the work of identifying that and challenging that false belief that we adapted from who knows what experience of the past, it is continuing to influence our every decision and our experiences. And that's why we get triggered, right? Something happens that, for me, with this same example, something might happen that triggers me and I feel weak and I feel not respected and I feel less than. And it puts me into this state of like fight or flight, like survival mode. And then I'm choosing at that point from my lower self. The natural man is like in charge when I'm in that state. And so if I'm not doing the work to become self-aware and to identify those wounds and to work on overcoming and healing from them, and part of the healing process is when we connect with God and he helps us identify the lie and replace it with truth. And that is such an important part of our healing process. I might think in my head, I am weak and I am not worthy of being respected. And what is God going to tell me? Or what am I going to now tell myself? And these are affirmation statements. Like, this is a therapy tool, but really it's the atonement of Christ at work at helping us heal and overcome our false beliefs or our limiting beliefs. And so I can say now, with God, I am strong. I am confident. I am worthy of love and belonging with him, through him, because of him. But we only get to those powerful breakthrough truths when we've moved through the lie and identified it from the pain that we've been through. That was a long last word.
It was long and perfect. It was really needed. Thank you so much. I've learned a ton. I'm so glad to be a brother to you, to know you, and I respect and look up to all the work you're doing, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future. And thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me, and I love what you're doing. I just respect and honor you, and it's awesome. Keep it up. I'm grateful that we're connected now.
Cool. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
If you like this episode, make sure you subscribe. And if you're looking for more ways to include God throughout your day, check out some of my recent music I created in partnership with Skylight. Link in the description.